Welcome to the Columbus Metropolitan Club. I'm Deb Hackathorn. I'm a proud member of the CMC Board of Trustees, and in my day job, I'm the head of government relations at Frost Brown Todd. It is truly wonderful to see all of you here today. Please be aware that something a little different for today's program is that our traditional audience questions will be submitted in writing. You'll find a piece of paper in your forum flyer for those questions, so please, as you think of them, do mark them down. We have staff that will come around, or volunteers, frankly, that will come around and pick those up from you as we get to the question portion of the program. So have them ready, and those will be read aloud, and the person who asked the question will be named, so please be aware of that. CMC is sponsored today by the Ohio Farm Bureau Federation, Hannah News Service, and the Mizuchi Law Group, and in partnership with WCMH NBC4. Each are represented here by many friends and associates, so please help me thank them for their support. All right, on to the good stuff. Today, we're pleased to present the candidates for Ohio's 15th Congressional District, and we look forward to what we know will be a lively and civil debate between the two. Without further ado, please welcome the incumbent Republican Congressman of the 15th Congressional District, Steve Stivers. And welcome his Democratic challenger for this seat, Rick Neal. And of course, please welcome our moderator today, co-anchor at NBC4, Colleen Marshall. Colleen, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone, and we welcome you to the debate between the two major party candidates for the congressional seat in Ohio's 15th district. And in keeping with the tradition of the Columbus Metropolitan Club, this debate will be in the style of a community conversation, with each candidate being asked the same question, alternating who goes first. Each is also going to give a 2-minute opening statement, and by coin flip agreement at the beginning, Congressman Stivers will be speaking first. Congressman?
Well, thank you, Colleen, and I want to thank the Columbus Metropolitan Club for hosting today's debate. I also want to thank my wife, Karen, for being here today. A lot of you in the room already know me, and I'm not going to talk a lot about who I am. I'm going to talk about what I've done. You know, we live in a very divided country, and we need leaders who will bring us together. That's what I have done, and it's what I will do. In fact, the Lugar Institute ranked me the 37th most bipartisan member of Congress and the most bipartisan in Ohio. I've introduced 18 bills during this 2-year period and had Democratic co-sponsors on every single one of them. And I've passed 6 bills into law, 6 bills that make a difference in people's daily lives, that affect the opioid crisis, that help our veterans, that help our community, give more capital to small business, that help our community by like naming the National Veterans Memorial and Museum. And I've done things that weren't bills, like helping Vinton County get a grocery store again so they can be more food secure and get fresh food, and helping get a KC-135 flight simulator that's going to bring economic development to our region and help our Ohio National Guard. Additionally, I've worked with Congresswoman Joyce Beatty on civility because I think that's important. And the big picture, I've worked to change our tax and regulatory climate that have given us economic growth above 4%. In fact, this quarter, 4.6% according to the Atlanta Fed. Unemployment at 3.7%. In fact, there are more open positions in America today than people seeking jobs, and consumer confidence is at an all-time high. On top of that, income growth in our district, income was up 8.4% year over year, according to the American Community Survey. And I've got an agenda for the future of continuing to work on infrastructure, opioids, sustaining Medicare and Social Security, and addressing health care costs. So that's what I am, or what I've done. That's who I am, and I look forward to today's conversation, and I want to thank Rick for being here. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Congressman. And we go now to the Democratic challenger, Rick Neal.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Colleen. Thank you to the Columbus Metropolitan Club. Thank you, Congressman, for being here. Thanks for everyone for coming, and especially a big thanks to the staff here at the Boathouse for taking care of us so well today. I'm really proud to be here. I am the Democratic candidate for Congress here in Ohio's 15th district. The district starts right here at the Boathouse and goes all the way down to Wilmington and over to Athens. It's the best district in the state, and I couldn't be more proud than to be running to represent everyone here in the district. As I've traveled through all 12 of the counties that make up the district and have spoken to thousands of people, the big thing that I've learned over these last several months is just how much we've been left behind by our representative in Congress, by you, Congressman. Left behind on health care. Your vote in May of 2017 to repeal the Affordable Care Act with nothing reasonable to put in its place harms Ohioans, would have gutted Medicaid expansion, and would have put pre-existing conditions coverage back on the chopping block. The tax bill that you helped push through at the end of last year, a tax giveaway to the richest and most powerful people in our country that now you're signaling that you're going to pay for by coming after folks' Social Security and Medicare. And left behind just in terms of our politics. After the 2016 election, when people were pretty worried and uneasy about what was happening, people wanted your help here in the district. You went the other way. You went right into the Washington swamp. You joined the leadership of your party as the chairman of the House Republican fundraising effort to maintain your majority in Congress. And we needed you here. That's because that's who I am. I was a Peace Corps volunteer right out of college. I turned that into a career in public health and worked with refugees in Asia and Africa. Even after I met my husband, Tom, and settled here in Columbus to raise our 2 girls, I kept my ear to the ground. And 4 years ago, when the Ebola epidemic broke out, I went back to Africa to help. I'm very, very proud of that record of service. It's the same spirit of collaboration and practical, pragmatic work that I'll bring to Congress. Very proud to be here with you today, too. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, gentlemen, we do want to talk about issues important to Ohio families today as we have this conversation. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said just this week that because of the burgeoning national debt, a yearly deficit, by the way, of about $780 billion, I believe, it's time for Congress to go after what he calls the entitlements, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. This question goes first to you, Congressman Stivers. Would you support reductions in those programs, either to current benefit recipients or to future recipients of those 3 programs?
Thank you, Colleen. And, I believe we need to sustain Medicare and Social Security. They both will go broke if we don't do anything. And I believe we've got to work together as Republicans and Democrats to figure out how to do that. I support raising the cap on the Medicare, the Social Security wage rate that caps out a little over $100,000 now. And I believe that we should look at people who are of significant means, millionaires and billionaires, and decide whether they should be getting Social Security benefits. After all, it's a social safety net program. It's not really a retirement program. I think we need to work with Republicans and Democrats to make changes, though, and we need to give and take. We need to do it the way Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill did. That's the only way forward. I do believe that we have to deal with our national debt by 3 things. We've got to figure out how to grow the economy. That's what the Tax Cut and Jobs Act is doing. It's growing at 4.6% this quarter. That's a big deal. In fact, the deficit numbers that came out were about half of what the government agencies had projected it to be. They had projected it to be about $200 billion more. It was $113 billion more as a result of economic growth, which is only just now getting started. But I do believe we need to deal with our debt, and I think we need to do it in a Simpson Bowles-like manner where we all come together and figure out how to give a little on both sides, including issues like national defense, where I think we need to figure out how to get some of our allies to pay more and figure out how to be more efficient. Thank you, Colleen.
All right, and Mr. Neal, how do you feel about the proposal to do something about Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid?
Well, I think, it would be hilarious if it weren't so tragic. That the reason that Mitch McConnell brought this up, of course, is for the fiscal crisis that he and Republicans in Congress, including the congressman here, created last year when they pushed through this tax bill that added $1.5 trillion to the national credit card, and now they want to come after Social Security and Medicare to pay for it. The richest and wealthiest people in this country benefited from that tax bill, and I should add that their donors were pretty clear about what would happen if they didn't get that passed. You know, what was the quote from the guy in Houston? He was going to turn off the spigot. Boy, that got them moving. And now they want to come after the earned benefits, not entitlements, the earned benefits that working families all over this district and this state and this country had paid into, and they're going to come after that. They're going to come after the benefits. They're going to say, oh, look, now we've got these deficits. We got to raise the retirement age. We got to cut benefits. What are we going to do? They created it. It's their problem. And now they want to fix it by going after the benefits of working families. It's unconscionable.
This question will go first to you, Mr. Neal. Obviously, you don't support reductions in Social Security and Medicaid, but the deficit is real. And if the deficit is to be controlled, it either has to be done through cuts in spending or a hike in taxes. Those are the only options. So would you support cuts in military spending or rollbacks of some of the tax cuts that are credited for, as the congressman said, the thriving economy? At what point would you support a rollback that would make a difference?
So I'll try to get at this in a couple different ways. First of all, I think the congressman and I would agree that there's a third option there, not just cutting spending, not just raising taxes, but efficiency in government, efficiency in savings. And that's why working with Medicare, for example, which is an idea that I have to open up Medicare so that folks 55 to 65 in that hard-to-insure range can buy into that program. Medicare is very efficient. That would have some savings. Those are a way to deal with the deficit. But the other thing is, you said that could you repeat the last part of the question again?
Right. Would you support some kind of a cut either in military spending or a hike in taxes or a rollback of the tax cut from last year?
Well, so the rollback of the tax cut. So I am a big believer in tax reform. I thought that was a great place to start. Let's keep going. Tax reform is a great place to start so that we get a tax system where everybody pays their fair share. That's how it's supposed to work, and that's what's going to be good for our country. So I agree. Let's keep going on tax reform.
Right, and Congressman, how do you feel about the calls, some say, for cuts in military spending or a rollback of those taxes to save entitlements?
Well, as I said earlier, there are not two ways to balance the budget. There are three. You can raise tax rates, you can cut spending, or you can grow the economy. You grow the pie, tax it at the same amount, you get more revenue. We need to address all three. Really quickly, to Rick's proposal on expanding Medicare. You know, at first he talks about Medicare for 55 and over. That would cost $1 trillion, and it would bankrupt Medicare on day one. Medicare for All, something he supported in his pancake video, would cost $3 trillion a year and bankrupt Medicare on day one. We have to figure out we cannot bankrupt Medicare that our senior citizens depend on. That is a very dangerous proposal. And I have said I'm for being willing to change our military system, ask our allies to pay more. I think that's a really important thing. When you look at NATO, our allies are not paying enough. Look at the Japanese, who've had in their constitution since 1946 that they can only spend 1% of their gross domestic product on defense. They clearly aren't paying their fair share. We need our allies to pay more. We need to look at our basing strategy. We still have a basing strategy based on World War II. And I know a little bit about this, Colleen. I'm a brigadier general in the Ohio National Guard and graduate of the Ohio Army, or the U.S. Army War College. So I know we can get more bang for our buck out of our military spending, and we can get our allies to pay more. That has to be part of how we balance the budget. That said, you know, military spending about $600 billion a year. The deficit is more than that. Even if we zeroed out military, it's not enough all by itself. We have to do a holistic approach, and I think we do need to look at a Simpson Bowles type of approach.
All right, let's move on to the next question, and this goes first to you, Congressman Stivers. The Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, ICE, has stepped up enforcement here in Ohio, around the country, but here in Ohio dramatically. Deportations were up 36% last year. There are people who have been arrested in traffic court within your district. Some Democrats are calling for abolishing ICE altogether. How do you react to that, and what is the proper way to enforce our immigration laws?
Well, thank you, Colleen. I would not abolish ICE. ICE protects us from illegal drugs coming across our border. It protects us against terrorists who want to come across our border. It's an important protection. That said, some of the enforcement, needs to be right-sized. When somebody walks out of traffic court and gets arrested, that's a problem, and we need to figure out how to reform our immigration system. That's why I voted for a bill earlier in the year that would have done several things, including it would have given a path to the Dreamers for a legal status. It would have paid for border security, because I think we do need border security, and it would have permanently prevented family separations at the border, a policy I came out immediately against, and the administration indeed changed it after I got dozens of my colleagues to sign a letter opposing family separation. The administration pretty quickly walked back and changed the policy of family separations at the border. So there's more work to do, but I would not support abolishing ICE. Colleen.
And Mr. Neal, do you support, as some people in your party do support, abolishing ICE? And if so, what would be the proper way to enforce our immigration laws?
No, I don't support abolishing it. What I do support is stopping the fear-mongering around immigration. This is, and Congressman, I have to say, your reaction to our government ripping kids away from their families and throwing them into cages was not immediate. What we've got here is fear-mongering. Immigration, there are concerns about immigration. There are things that we can do, hopefully together, to fix our immigration system. But for the most part, the immigration crisis in our country is manufactured by this president as he continues to stoke fear and prejudice for personal and political gain. That is what this immigration crisis is about. And so, and this is something that I know something about. I worked with refugees for 7 years in Asia and Africa. I mean, it's my background. This is why I became a humanitarian, was to help refugees and help migrants. Even this, these reports now of 4,000 people on the move in Central America, and I am worried that Donald Trump is not interested in helping solve the problem, but is waiting to use it for political gain over these next 2 weeks. There's a simple solution on the table for this. You work with the government of Guatemala, you work with the United Nations, you work with the International Organization for Migration, you make sure that women in the caravan, that kids, that old people are taken care of, and you deal with the problem like you would normally, not letting it become a political football for the party in power to use. I think that if we can get rid of the fear-mongering, and that involves standing up to the president and saying no, and that has to come from you.
Let's move on to the amount of money that is in the political campaigns that we are seeing ads for each and every day. Would you support, and this question goes first to you, Mr. Neal, would you support a measure that would ban PAC money from election campaigns?
Yes, and it is what I will work on the first day on January 3rd in Congress. I have been clear about this since the beginning of my campaign. I accept no corporate PAC donations for my campaign. This has put me at a significant disadvantage. As I understand it, Congressman, 85% of donations to your campaign come from corporate PACs. So it's no surprise that you have a lot more money than I do, even though I've been working hard. But the issue is, and I'll speak for myself here, I mean, I can't speak for anybody else why they would accept that money, but for myself, I didn't want to accept it because as I got out into the district, what I saw was a district that needed an honest broker. They needed someone who could, weigh all the competing interests that come before a congressperson, that comes before the, the delegation, and you have to weigh it carefully. And I don't think that that's possible with this huge flood of corporate PAC money coming into our elections. So greater transparency is the first step. I think it's something that everybody is calling for, that everybody should be able to get behind. But then putting up better guardrails so that corporations cannot exercise this undue influence on our elections.
And Congressman, how do you feel about PAC money in elections?
Well, let's talk about what PAC money is. PAC money is not corporate money. It's employees that band together, that choose to exercise their First Amendment right. It's what it is. It's what it is, people. I'm sorry. I don't have $300,000 to put in my race the way my opponent does. He put almost $300,000 of his own money.
That's how strongly I believe in this race.
We cannot let rich people just buy seats.
Whoa.
We need to make sure that everybody has a First Amendment right and it's protected. And I believe in full disclosure of every dollar given to campaigns immediately. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. I believe that is the best reform we can make, and let the public know exactly who's funding every campaign.
So then, did you counsel Congressman Renacci not to get into the race because you knew he was just going to sit down at his kitchen table and write himself a check for $4 million to get going on the Senate race? I mean, come on.
All right, let's try to be civil and stick to the format. And this question will go first to, I believe, Congressman Stivers. We're going to talk about health care. A lot has been spoken recently about mandatory coverage of pre-existing conditions and whether that is sustainable. What is your position, Congressman, on pre-existing conditions?
Well, I support making sure people with pre-existing condition can have access to affordable insurance. And in fact, the Washington Post and a bunch of other people have taken the claim my opponent and others have made about pre-existing conditions. The Washington Post gave that 4 Pinocchios. The bill that I voted for did nothing to hurt people's access with pre-existing condition and take away their access to insurance. So that's why I got 4 Pinocchios. We have to make sure that people with pre-existing condition have access to health care. But the problem in health care is that health care is too expensive. So the way forward on health care is to create price transparency, quality transparency, and give patients skin in the game so that if they choose to shop for non-emergency services, their insurance company has to actually, prepay some of their premiums or give them some upside for actually saving money. That's the only way we'll ever put downward pressure on price, and that's what we need to do in health care.
And your position, Mr. Neal, on pre-existing condition coverage?
I will fight every day for everyone in District 15 to guarantee that health insurance companies or health care providers must provide coverage for pre-existing conditions, period. The bill that you voted for, and I don't know about Pinocchios or not, or whatever you want to call them, the bill that you voted for in May of 2017 to repeal the Affordable Care Act would have put at risk coverage for pre-existing conditions. And one of your party leaders has said that he is looking forward to revisiting repeal of the Affordable Care Act. Have you filed a brief with this federal court case down in Texas that is putting coverage of pre-existing conditions at risk? This is what they're coming after. Everybody here today enjoys guaranteed coverage for pre-existing conditions, every single one of us. And if the congressman and his party here had his way, you would not.
That's not true.
So you're committing here now to never go after pre-existing condition coverage again?
I haven't gone after pre-existing condition coverage before.
All right, I'm going to give, if we can hold the audience participation down just a bit. we can get on with the debate. And since you did challenge him, I'm going to give the congressman 30 seconds to respond, because pre-existing condition coverage is important to a lot of Ohioans. So let's get this on the table. How do you respond to Mr. Neal's claims?
It's simply not true, and I believe we need to protect people with pre-existing conditions, and I will protect people with pre-existing conditions getting access to affordable insurance.
All right, this question goes first to Mr. Neal. There are new reports that claim climate change is worse and moving more quickly than first believed. The president has said in the past that climate change is a hoax and scientists have a political agenda. Is climate change real?
Climate change is real and largely caused by human activity, and so humans have to do something about it. That, I mean, this should, why is this even a question? It's a question, of course. It's a question, of course, because we have an administration that is simply interested in dividing people, in sowing confusion, instead of trying to work on hard issues and do something about it. And it's hard to think of a more difficult one than climate change. What's interesting, what's great about our district is that we have a lot of the solutions to this right here. There is tremendous entrepreneurial energy throughout the district, especially in the Appalachian counties. People who are ready to go on renewable energy and all the jobs that they bring, as well as the positive environmental impact. I want to do everything I can to support that. Everything I can with infrastructure, with loans, with digital infrastructure. This is what we need to be doing. We can, the environmental revolution starts here, and we have to do everything that we can to make sure, and what I want to add here is that we have to do everything that we can to make sure that our communities in this district who have been most affected by the transition in our energy economy and will be most affected by the upcoming transition in our information economy, the way that our economy is changing around information and artificial intelligence, that those communities are not left behind again. That we do everything that we can to make sure that those communities have a fair and just transition to the new economy that's coming.
And Congressman Stivers, your position on whether or not climate change is real?
Climate change is absolutely real, and there is a way forward, and the way forward involves moving toward negative emissions. We've done a lot in Ohio through natural gas, which is still obviously carbon-based, but it burns much, much cleaner. As natural gas has gone up, and we have 150 years of supply of natural gas here. But there's more we need to do. We need to invest in things like battery technology and microgrids that can actually allow us to use the energy sources my opponent talks about, the renewable energy. Right now, if you don't need the energy when the sun is shining or the wind is blowing, it's wasted in the grid. We need microgrid technology with batteries that can store that energy so it can be used when it's needed, not just when it's produced. And that would allow some of our more clean energy to be used for base load. So there's a lot we have to do moving forward, and we've put research money into battery technology, into microgrids, and it's something I'll continue to work on.
And this question goes first to you, Congressman. The federal gas tax is just 18 cents a gallon. It was last raised in 1993. We are in an infrastructure crisis with roads, bridges, a lack of mass transit. Is this the time to raise the federal gas tax?
I think we can raise the federal gas tax, and I think we have to have infrastructure, but we also have to figure out how to pay for it. And the gas tax is the way we've always paid for it. Some people do drive electric cars now, and we need to figure that out. But I think that raising the gas tax is a legitimate way to pay for infrastructure, roads and bridges that we need. And when we talk about roads and bridges and infrastructure, one of the other pieces of infrastructure we should be talking about is rural broadband. This district that we're talking about today, the 15th district, has 12 counties, many of them rural. And rural broadband is not just a lifestyle issue, it's an economic development issue, because no company is going to move someplace that doesn't have electronic data interchange. It is an education issue because, frankly, 1 out of every 5 kids that gets issued a tablet or a laptop in their school takes it home. They don't have broadband internet, and it's just a paperweight. That is a problem and they can't access all the open source educational material that's out there. I've started working groups on broadband in a bunch of my communities. We've had some success already. I'm working to actually make some other changes. We have a new broadband program that we just passed, but there's a lot more work to do, and it's really important as part of infrastructure, and we have to figure that out too. But a gas tax is a legitimate way to pay for infrastructure, and I would support it.
All right, and Mr. Neal, would you support an increase in the federal gas tax to pay for the infrastructure problems we have in this country?
I would, and the caution that I want to put there, though, is that I do not support an infrastructure program that would include privatization of our national infrastructure. I think that is the wrong direction to go in. Yes, the gas tax, but smart and community-centered infrastructure development. You know, I got to tell you, there are so many stories I hear. Small-town mayors, the mayor of Baltimore and Fairfield County, Baltimore has 3,000 residents. They have an 80-year-old water system that was only designed to function for 50 years. It's going to cost him $17 million. Where is he supposed to get $17 million from a town of 3,000 people? Murray City, one of the little cities of the Black Diamonds, down where Perry and Morgan and Athens come together, and Hocking, because it's actually in Hocking County, does not have a functioning sewage system. And the EPA has actually told new businesses that they can't open, and they're trying to figure out what to do with the residents. So, I mean, the need obviously is clear, but beyond physical infrastructure, about broadband, my point here is about digital infrastructure, and not just for what you mentioned, Congressman, but also for rural hospitals. These are the largest employers in a lot of the counties, and so we have to do everything that we can to make sure that they have the connectivity they need. The question that I have, though, I mean, what's interesting about this whole debate is here we have a congressman who has been part of the majority for more than 18 months, controlled Congress, controlled the White House, and why haven't we gotten these things done? Why aren't these things moving forward, especially on infrastructure? I mean, what are we going to have to wait for the water system in Baltimore, Ohio to fail before we do something? So you really have to wonder, full control of the government and things not getting done. So let's put some new folks in there and let's see what we can make happen.
The next question goes first to you, Mr. Neal. What should Congress be doing to keep guns out of the hands of the mentally ill?
Thank you. This is a crucial question, and as a public health professional, this is something I think about every day. And not just about guns, Colleen. We have far too many people, and I think we've all heard heartbreaking stories from people in this district and across the state who have died too soon from gun violence, domestic violence, from suicide. So many problems that come back to mental health and behavioral health. And this is a part of, of course, the discussion about what we're going to do with our healthcare system so that we make sure that behavioral health treatment and prevention is part of the discussion, so we make sure that that also is covered the way it needs to be. For gun violence in particular, I'm a public health guy, and I want to come at this from a public health perspective. So we have a public health agency in the United States that prevents disease and prevents health problems, the Centers for Disease Control. Let's let them do their job and collect data, not just around incidents of gun violence, but also collect data about how programs are working so that we can not only show which programs work in reducing gun violence, but show folks that their Second Amendment rights are not being violated in the process. So let's let the CDC do its job. Let's have universal background checks, and let's support community-led and driven efforts like Moms Demand Action, who go to folks and they do community trainings so that folks can keep themselves and their weapons and their kids safe in their homes and their vehicles. Let's support programs like that.
And Congressman, what do you think Congress should be doing to keep guns specifically out of the hands of the mentally ill?
Thank you, and I'm glad my opponent supports getting rid of the Dickey Amendment that prevented CDC from studying gun violence, because I voted to get rid of it earlier this year, and now the CDC can study gun violence. So I think we can both agree that's an important step, but our background check system is broken and doesn't include a lot of information on health information as a result of the HIPAA law. We need to figure out how to get the right information there. We also need to give our law enforcement agencies threat assessment information so they can actually figure out who might do something before they do it. And we need to spend money on mental health treatment. And we've increased funding for mental health treatment in the last 2 years, and I think it's going to make a difference. But there's a lot more to do, and I'm going to keep working on it. I've held 2 summits on school violence, and I've heard from small superintendents from small districts and superintendents of big districts, law enforcement, and they've told us the things they need, and we're working to get it for them. We passed the Stop School Violence Act, and I've helped get money to Ohio schools as a result of that, a grant program. So there's a lot more we can do, but we've started the ball in the right direction.
We want to remind the audience, if you have questions, the question from the audience period is coming up very soon. We're doing it a little differently today. Put them in writing. Someone will be by, and our board members will be asking you for those questions, and they'll be reading them to us. But before we do that, I want to get to my final question of the day, which goes first to Congressman Stivers. The president has said that the midterm elections are a referendum on his first 2 years in office. Do you believe voters will decide this election based on their feelings about Donald Trump?
I don't think so. I think some people will. Obviously, the president motivates some people on the base of the Democrat Party, and he motivates some people on the base of the Republican Party. But most people are going to come out, and they're going to vote for the person they think shares their values and will work hard to get results for them. That's what I've done in Congress. It's what I will do in Congress. I've worked with Republicans and Democrats. I have a bipartisan record. I'm not going to be the loudest voice in the room. I'm not going to be the angriest voice in the room. I'm going to be somebody who works with the Republicans and Democrats to get things done. I think that's what people want. We'll find out.
And Mr. Neal, do you believe this is a referendum on the Trump administration?
I was going to talk about health care, and then I saw a woman in the back raise her hand to say, yes, it is. So I'm not sure. Obviously, I think, the president is the elephant in the room, literally. I mean, we think about him all the time. And in the 15th district, there are a lot of people who are deeply worried about the tone, about the lies, about the corruption, about the attacks on our democratic institutions, about not standing up for us and our democracy and our country. At the same time, of course, people are also deeply worried about their health care, deeply worried about their retirement security. And so this is it is a vote for change. It is a vote for someone who is going to stand up and fight for people in this district every single day to make sure that folks have affordable health care and make sure that their retirement is protected. And make sure that you have someone in Congress who's going to stand up and speak out and push back when what is coming out of the White House does not reflect our values and what we need as a country. And, I'll say that the thing about bipartisanship and civility is interesting when, this is, and we talk about this all the time, and the thing that I realize about civility, of course, is that the reason that we talk so much about civility here in Columbus, and we talk about the Columbus way, is because that's what civility is required for us to be able to work together. Especially in times of crisis. And yet, how can we do that? How can we build the trust required to be able to work together when, Congressman, you're not standing up to the biggest source of incivility, which is the president, but also that you yourself are a source of that incivility. You're the chair of the National Republican Congressional Committee, which is tasked with expanding the Republican majority in Congress, and you are doing that by paying for and deploying all of these divisive, nasty attack ads all over the country. So you yourself are a source of the incivility that is creating the problems in this country.
Because that was a direct challenge to the congressman, we'll give you 30 seconds to respond.
Well, that's simply not true, and I've actually put forward a bunch of rules for our folks. The things that they say in our ads have to be true and they have to be fair, and I think they are. And I will say I've stood up to the administration and the president many times. I stood up to him on Charlottesville. I stood up to him on family separation. I've stood up to him on tariffs. I've stood up to him when I feel like the things he says are not fair or right or don't reflect our values. And if you want somebody who's going to be part of the resistance, vote for my opponent. That's what he's running for. He wants to be part of the resistance. That's fine. But if you want somebody who's going to deliver results, vote for me.
All right. We thank both of you, and we are going to be taking questions from the audience. We will be right back. All right. All right, and we are back. All right, we thank you. Now, if we could get your attention again. It's part of the tradition of the Columbus Metropolitan Club to allow members of the audience to ask questions of the panelists, and we are going to do that today as part of this debate. They will be read by members of the Board of Directors for the CMC, and we're going to begin with our good friend, Carol Looper. Carol?
Thanks, Colleen. This follows up on what you've been discussing, and it is a question from Roy Lewicki. It's for Representative Stivers, but also for Mr. Neal. How can you agree for working across the aisle when Congress is incapable of doing this?
Who's first?
You're first.
Okay. Congress isn't incapable of doing so. I have 18 bills that I have a Democrat co-sponsor on every one. Joyce Beatty and I have led on the issue of civility. We've brought together over 30 of our colleagues, Republican and Democrats together. They have to join as a Republican and Democrat pair and help them travel to each other's district and talk about why civility is important. Because in this country, and in Congress, we can disagree without being disagreeable. Civility is not just a problem in Congress. It's a problem in our families, our communities. When my friend Steve Scalise got shot for no other reason than being a Republican at a Republican baseball practice, that's a problem. When somebody threatened to kill not only me, but my wife and my then 7-year-old daughter, that's a problem. The ultimate destination of incivility is violence. We cannot put up with it, and people deserve a better example. And that's what I think Joyce Beatty and I have tried to do, and I think it's important. And while there will always be examples of incivility in Congress, in our community, other places, what we need to do is show people that you can disagree without being disagreeable. Thanks for the question.
Mr. Neal?
Thank you, and it is interesting that in the face of those terrifying and abhorrent examples, that again, you are in charge of that committee that deploys all those negative and divisive ads and adds to the atmosphere of incivility in the country. What I want to talk about, though, is the question about working together. So, I mentioned briefly, I worked overseas for 7 years. I'm a humanitarian. I ran public health programs for refugees in Asia and Africa. And the great thing about humanitarian work is that it is very, very practical and it is very collaborative. So I might be working in a place and you would wake up one morning and 1,000 women and children had shown up overnight needing help. I worked on water and sanitation projects, and there were other people in town who did shelter or food or medical care. You all woke up and you said, where are they? What do they need? What are we going to do? Not once in my career did I ever say, or did someone say to me, oh, well, I'm not going to work with that guy because I don't agree with his politics. Or I'm not going to work with that agency over there because I don't share their religion. Not once. Our mission was to save lives and get people back on their feet and get them home. And we worked together to make that happen. Even afterwards, when I went to Washington, D.C. and advocated for better humanitarian assistance for refugees, I found some unlikely common ground in the office of Senator James Inhofe. Now, Senator Inhofe is a pretty conservative guy. And we definitely did not see eye to eye on one thing. Me as an openly gay man, Senator Inhofe not agreeing that I deserved full equality. Didn't matter. Senator Inhofe and I shared an interest in refugees in Central Africa. Every time I came back from a trip, I called up his staff and said, I'm ready to update you guys. And we would go in there and talk to him. I will go anywhere. I will talk to anyone. I will do anything if I think that that's going to help folks.
I do think it's interesting that Rick has spent the entire debate trashing the Republican Party by name and some candidates, and now he does want to talk about civility. So, I mean, at some point,
You got to stand up for what's right, right?
you can't spend the whole time being partisan and claim all of a sudden you're civil.
All right, and we'll have our next question.
Bill Lafayette, owner of Regionomics, and I ask this question on behalf of Kathy Fox. What should Congress be doing to prevent foreign interference in our elections?
We'll start with you this
Okay.
time.
Thank you. This is a critical problem, especially because it seems to be ignored by the party in power and by the president because they think it's going to benefit them politically. And it's shocking. Congress let me tell you, Congress is a critical and noble institution that is enshrined in the first article of our Constitution. And its job, above all, is to act as a check on the other branches of government, right? Here we're having a civics lesson. Congress has to push back on this, enact legislation that makes it clear, whether or not the president signs it, that makes it clear that we have to protect our election systems and to punish foreign adversaries who are trying to influence our elections, as we saw in 2016. And yet again, here they have full control of Congress, control of the White House, and we're just not seeing that commitment again because they think it's going to benefit them politically. What a shocking development.
And Congressman Stivers?
Thank you. So Congress did pass a sanctions bill on Russia as a result of their meddling in our election and over the objections of the administration, but it was the right thing to do. We need to stand up. I do believe our intelligence agencies are correct, and we did pass sanctions against Russia. It's law, Rick, just so you know.
I do. The question is about, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
This is my time. We passed a sanctions bill. I think that's a good start. There is more we need to do to continue to stand up when somebody would influence our election. And the popular myth is that the Russians wanted to influence the outcome of the election. What the Russians wanted to do was divide us as a country. And you know what? In that, they succeeded. We are more divided. The social fabric of our society has been ripped apart, and Republicans don't talk to Democrats. Democrats don't talk to Republicans, and people want to use everything for political advantage. It's really sad, and it's unfortunate, and that's why I voted for the sanctions bill, and I'll come back and do more if that one's not tough enough.
If I may,
We'll give you 30 seconds to
it'll be really
respond.
brief. So the thing about sanctions is that it's the enforcement that matters, and I'm not convinced that Congress is providing sufficient oversight on that. And then the thing about being at each other's throats and being divided, I mean, this is the narrative that Russia wants us to believe, and yet I got to tell you, from what I've seen out in this district, so just on Monday night, we were down in MacArthur in Vinton County, and the group that normally puts on the candidate forum didn't do it. They didn't get it organized. So the Republican County Central Committee and the Democratic County Central Committee got together and organized. It was a super forum. It was a terrific forum. It was great, and so that is happening. Out in our districts, in our small towns, everywhere, people are coming together to try to make things better. So Russia's not winning, and I'm really proud of that.
We have one final question. We have time for one more, and this will go first to Congressman Stivers.
Tim Sword, President of Greater Columbus Sister Cities International. Actually, I have two questions. Mr. Stivers, this is from Mary Jo Green. Mr. Stivers, what is the most important issue you voted on where you did not vote the Republican Party position?
Thank you. I would say the most important issue where I didn't vote the Republican Party position is Russian sanctions that I just talked about. It was important. It was the right thing to do. Sometimes you have to stand up for what's right, even, for example, the administration opposed it. But it was the right thing to do. Thank you.
William Edwards, Rick Neal stated that you supported tax reform where everyone pays their fair share. In a perfect world, what is the fair share and what would the tax reform look like to you?
Thank you. It's a tough and difficult question, and I think back to, I'm going to get the year wrong, but right around the recession here in Columbus, Mayor Coleman and Hugh Dorian and I believe the partnership went to the people and said, this is a tough time, but we've got to raise revenue for what we want to do as a city, and it passed. I mean, it was extraordinary, but everybody understood that you go to the people and you make the case that there are things that we want to do together as a community, and we have to raise revenue to do that. And that's our job, and just trying to run away. I mean, I was happy to hear about the gas tax, but trying to run away and dodge this question about taxes. We created government in this country to get things done for us as a group, things that we can't do individually or even states can't do by themselves, and that costs money. And so you make the case. I don't know what the perfect tax plan is going to be. We need to figure it out. We need to stop dodging the question. But everybody, the fundamental principle is that everybody has to pay their fair share. And with this tax bill that got pushed through last fall and added insult to injury just a few weeks ago by adding to it, $1.5 trillion that benefits the wealthiest and most powerful people in this country, and they want to pay for it on the backs of working families by cutting Social Security and Medicare, is not the way to do it.
By agreement, we will have 30-second closing statements. Congressman Stivers will go first.
No problem. Thank you. It's my honor to represent this district, and I believe I've delivered for this district. There's a handout at everybody's sheet that talks about what I've done to get bills passed, what I've done to support our community. If I'm elected, what I've done to support civility. I will continue to work in a bipartisan fashion and get things done. The only thing that Rick didn't answer on the tax question is, would he vote to repeal the tax cuts that are driving this economy and driving economic growth? I know we'd all love to hear the answer to that, but I will continue to deliver for the people of this district if I'm reelected. I appreciate the chance to be with you. God bless you and have a great day.
And Mr. Neal?
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to be here. I'm just incredibly proud. What I'm asking for is your vote, a vote to help fix our healthcare system, a vote to protect Social Security, and a vote to get our politics back on track, to restore some decency to our government and hard work. I will fight every day for everyone in this district. I could not be more proud than to do that and to ask for your vote. Thank you all very, very much.
And we thank both of, please join me in thanking both of these men for taking their time out to answer our questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Colleen. Appreciate it.
Thank you again to our candidates and to Colleen. I hope you found today's forum as interesting and educational and informative as I did. We encourage you to continue the conversation with coffee and cookies. Again, let's thank our sponsors today. A special thanks to the League of Women Voters, the Ohio Farm Bureau Federation, Hannah News Service, Masucci Law Group, and our partner WCMH NBC4 for their support. And one more thank you to our speakers, to Congressman Steve Stivers, Democratic candidate Rick Neal, and our wonderful moderator, Colleen Marshall. Thank you all for being here. We'll see you next week.